everybody, welcome back to the channel. What's going on? Hello, how you doing? Lovely, brilliant. Guys, I'm so deep into my Sims pit at the moment. I physically had to drag myself off the game to film this. And guys, no, stop, look, listen to me. When I say my life revolves around The Sims, I'm not trying to play around here. Okay, this is next level. It might actually be a serious issue if I'm being honest. I've not been at work for 4 days because it's a bank holiday, it's a long weekend, and I work in a school, so I don't work weekends. Guys, I've played like 10 hours of The Sims every single day. That's 40 hours of The Sims in 4 days. Anyway, also happy Met Gala Day to the girls, the gays, the theys, the thems. Happy Met Gala Day. And I will be there sat on Pop Base late at night scrolling in my pajamas in my bed, and I will be judging everybody. I will, because I will. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day. Let me actually get onto the point of this video. Today we are going to be talking about Emily Fields, because I find her interesting in a way that's not good, if that makes any sense. There's a few characters on Pretty Little Liars that I feel like the writers really were kind of wrong towards, and they were very underwhelming towards certain characters. I think Ren's writing could have been better. Maya and Emily is right up there on the characters where I think the writing ultimately let down Emily's character. And Emily is known throughout the show as kind of like the boring one, because she has nothing. She doesn't have anything, and it's really frustrating because I like Emily's character. I like Shay Mitchell. I have nothing against Emily's character. She's really nice. She doesn't really do anything to like annoy me or anything like that, and I think she's actually very comforting a lot of the time to her friends. I think she's a good friend. However, she is my least favorite purely because there is nothing to Emily, and there is nothing kind of surrounding her that really impacts the story until a bit later on, which is an issue that we'll get to. But I think it's a shame, because I really like Emily, but I think the writing surrounding her, I think they just didn't really know what to do with her. Kind of once her main story was like done, like after Maya, I don't think they knew really, okay, what can we do here to continue Emily's character on. I really liked Emily. She was very ambitious. She was very caring. She was obviously on the swim team, and that really kind of provided to her ambitions about her life and what she wanted to do. I think she was very grounded. I think she was very set on, this is what I want to do in life. And I really like characters like that, like really just like they know what they want and they're gonna go for it. Do you know what I mean? She obviously met Alison at some point in her life and kind of came involved in that whole like group that we know to be the Liars nowadays. And Alison became ultimately a really important part in her life. Sorry guys, this bit of hair here doesn't like to stay down, and it's really infuriating. Alison obviously became a really important part in Emily's life and a part of Emily's character, which is one of my main issues, I'll just say it now. Emily's character ultimately just surrounded her love life. I feel like audiences are very split on kind of love things in series. I think there's an audience which the love relationship, it really caters to them, and that's what they want out of a show. But I feel like for Pretty Little Liars, the whole show is surrounding the mystery, and when a character purely just becomes their relationships, I think it does get boring. I think it's really nice at the start and you can like root for them and stuff like that, but I think ultimately the more it drags on and the more it's like, okay, but where are her other storylines, it really kind of like limits her character. For example, her other kind of counterparts on the show, Arya, Hannah, and Spencer, they had their romantic storylines, but that wasn't kind of like the main thing surrounding their character. And ultimately they had other storylines that really impacted the show and really kind of brought importance to their character and their actions. But Emily, although Emily would go through stuff in the show, which we will talk about, nothing really impacts the main story. And I do think that is the problem, because, you know, we're trying to care about all of these characters, but when someone is kind of pushed to the back and their story doesn't really matter on the show and kind of the whole point of the show, it's kind of like, okay, I'm trying to care, I want to care about your character, but the writers are not allowing me to physically do that. Season 1 to 2 Emily, I really enjoyed. She had a really important storyline regarding kind of exploring her sexuality and kind of coming to terms with her sexuality, and kind of the battle with that, with the battle of her parents, when she came out to them, they weren't exactly supportive. Pam, her mum, was very negative surrounding it and literally sent Maya away when that whole thing happened. Wayne was a bit more supportive. He didn't agree with it himself, but he was like, look, I'm going to prioritize my daughter here, and as long as she's alive and she's healthy, I don't really care. But she had that whole battle. Ben was also in the situation, and she thought she was straight at the start of the story, and then we do delve into the point where she has a crush on Maya, who is the new girl in town. But yeah, I really enjoyed that battle kind of within herself. I think it is also very relatable to a lot of other audiences, and a lot of young people watching the show. So I feel like that storyline was really important for the show. And her overall writing in season 2 is really good. The Maya storyline became really crucial for Emily's character development when Maya moves into town, obviously develops a crush, like I said, and then we kind of get flashbacks and kind of hints that Alison and Emily had kind of like not a thing, but kind of like a crush for each other, I guess. And Maya was so important for Emily's character development, and Maya allowed Emily to really figure out herself and her life and her sexuality and who she is within her own amount of time. I think there's a clear difference with Alison. Alison really kind of gaslighted Emily about her sexuality and didn't really allow Emily to figure things out by herself and give her time. And I will get onto it, but I don't like Emily and Alison as a couple. And I actually think it's a very toxic thing. And I think the difference between Emily and Maya and allowing and giving Emily that time was really crucial for Emily's development. And I think within the first 2 seasons, I really enjoyed Emily's character and her kind of living through that. And like I said, the battles with everything that she had really going on in her life. And then obviously within season 1 and 2, we had the whole Toby storyline, which was really interesting because it was a part of the actual story. And none of the girls trusting Toby apart from Emily. And you know, the whole night at like homecoming or whatever it was, with the whole like chase scene where like Emily got knocked unconscious, and the aftermath of that, and kind of like, you know, what is Toby's kind of relevance here, and how is he involved with Alison and things like that. It was really cool, and she was tied into the story, and I was like, okay, like we're doing something. And I think to put Emily with Toby, kind of, you know, the good girl and kind of the caring girl with Toby, who's obviously dealing with a lot of issues, was actually really nice to see, because you could see Emily kind of start to unravel Toby a bit and kind of unravel that there's more to Toby than we think, and not in a bad way, in a good way. So I really enjoyed that kind of storyline, and her being tied in like that was like really nice to see. And that's when she really held significance in the story, because we didn't know what was going to happen. But I think, and going back to Maya, sorry, this video is going to be so jumpy, like jumping from point to point. Going back to Maya, the chemistry that Emily had with Maya, I really built into it. I'm not the person who watches shows typically for relationships. I like the plot more than the relationships. But even that, I was invested. I was like, oh, okay. And now when I look back and Maya died, I'm like, what a waste of chemistry that they had, because I really built into this relationship. I really rooted for them. And I'm not someone who does that. Like, I don't really care about these things. I just want the plot and the main story of the show. So the fact that they even got me on board, I was like, oh yeah, Oh, exactly. And then also we had when Emily and Hannah moved in with each other. I really enjoyed that dynamic, and I think that actually added a lot to the story. You can tell at first they didn't really not like each other, but like living with each other was kind of like, oh, But I really enjoyed that kind of relationship with Ashley and Emily as well, because I think Ashley was someone that Emily needed at that point in her life, and I think she owes a lot of her character development to Ashley as well. So I really, really enjoyed that. But I think ultimately one of the main issues surrounding Emily is that her relationships are actually very unlikable. Maya was the only one, like I said, that I really kind of built into, and I was like, yeah, like I like Maya, and I like the chemistry, and I like what Maya offered to Emily and what Emily offered to Maya, whatever. But I think the main issue is the relationships. Now, I'm going to talk about Emily and Paige here. Now, Paige... No, I'll talk about Emily. Should I talk about Alison first or Paige? We'll talk about Alison. I really do not like Alison and Emily together. Oh, and by the way, I'm not trying to bash anyone's ships. You can ship who you want. You can root for who you want to. This is just my personal preference regarding it all. I really do not like Emily and Alison together. And this is because now listen to me. I love a good enemies to lovers. Right. I will be there. Fan fictions, I will be there, and I openly look for Emily's enemies to lovers tropes. Trust, I will be there. However, this just felt too beyond enemies to lovers. I don't know if any of you have watched Sex Education, but there's also a relationship in there between Eric and Adam where it's kind of like the bully becomes the trope, and I really, really detest that trope. And the similar thing happened with Emily and Alison, and Alison openly gaslighted Emily about her sexuality for so long, and I think the reason why Emily was so uncomfortable in herself and uncomfortable with kind of coming to terms with everything, and why it took her twice as long, was because of Alison. And I just really despise the bully becomes the lover. I just don't like it, because at the end of the day it's pure manipulation. I don't really see the love aspect, because Alison knew what she was doing, and she was openly manipulating Emily regarding her sexuality. She knew what she was doing to Emily, and Emily was really unaware what was going on. And therefore, I really hate it. It's forceful. And I feel like this relationship was put together purely because it was such a big fan favorite kind of relationship. It felt forceful. It didn't feel natural. And I was like, okay, I see what they're doing, but I'm just not feeling it. I didn't really feel like there was any chemistry between them. When Alison came back, Emily tried to frame her for Mona's murder. And I'm like, okay, so you would want Alison to go to prison for the rest of her life and then you fall in love? Like, I just don't really understand that aspect of it. But Alison put Emily through a lot of stuff in the past, and I just feel like it's quite weird that when they come back it's like, right, let's get them together type of thing. I did enjoy when she did come back, like there was the whole exploration of like, do they really like each other still, and they have that like kiss and whatever. I enjoyed that because I think it was like, okay, let's figure out, do I still have feelings for you, or was that the old Alison and the old Emily? And then after that, I would have liked if they would have just stopped and like moved on to other people. But I feel like it was just a really forceful relationship, like I said, because it was a fan favorite. And look, if you like Emily and Alison together, you do you. Like, that's completely fine as well. Like, there's no wrongs in this situation. It's all opinion based. But it's just my personal preference. I'm like, okay, I don't see the chemistry. I hate the trope of the bully becoming the lover. And I'm just like, we couldn't root for anyone else. This is a problem I've said with other relationships on the show, especially with Arya and Ezra. You cannot root for anybody else, because at the end of the day, there's going to be one end game couple, and like, you know straight off the bat that they're going to get together, and that will be end game. And I felt that with Emily and Alison too. And I'm like, okay, so you can't root for Emily's other relationships, even though they were just literally as bad. Because it was like, right, we're going to have one ending to this. Do you know what I mean? And then we move on to Paige, which is another situation of the bully becoming the lover. And we first kind of, not first meet Paige, but straight off the bat, Paige tries to drown Emily. And we're like, okay, right. And then Paige is very homophobic to Emily because Paige is struggling with her own issues. I hate that trope so bad. The kind of like closeted homophobic bully becomes the lover. I just despise it so much because like I don't see the chemistry. If you're openly homophobic to someone, you don't respect them or who they are. And you may be struggling with your own issues, and that is completely valid, and you know, have your own time to deal with that. Become the lover after you've put that person through a lot of grief. I don't vibe with it. I don't vibe with it. I do think Paige is overhated, but also that is reason to hate. Like, I do understand why people hate her. I personally don't like her either. I do think she is overhated though. I do not like her. There's reasons for it. She's also just quite annoying. She's quite bland. There's nothing to Paige. She's just very irritating, and it's the fault of the writers, to be honest, because she's like with Emily, she's kind of one-dimensional, and I'm like, okay, you're boring. I don't know what I'm rooting for here because there's no personality. Now, one thing about me, I love a good enemies to lovers. I have read a few thousand in my lifetime, but enemies to lovers like this, where it's like pure manipulation, bullying, and gaslighting, I will be closing AO3 and I will be finding something else. I really despise tropes like that so much. So her relationships are they're either boring or manipulative. And that's before we've even spoken about Sarah Harvey too. We will get on to Sarah Harvey at some point. But I think that's also an issue regarding Emily, because with Emily, her character is her relationships, but her relationships are so unlikable. It's like, okay, I love you very, very much, but what do you want me to do here? Like, literally in the space of season 1 to 2, we had 4 relationships. We had, I think her name was Samara, Alison, Maya, and Paige. And that's just like the first 2 seasons. I want to explore Emily's character beyond her relationships because I think she has so much potential, and so much, like, that's why I enjoyed the stories that were just kind of not the relationships regarding Emily, which we will get on to. But I feel like she's so let down. Season 3 is a time as well I really enjoyed Emily's character and what they were doing with her. They obviously had Maya had died, so the aftermath of that was very interesting. Emily took to drinking as a way to cope with everything, and then we have the whole thing where she's standing over Alison's grave, which is dug up, and it's kind of like Emily has kind of like her own, like, the night that this happened, and that's really interesting because we're kind of putting together who was involved, what happened, things like that, because Emily just totally blanks out. So that was really interesting. I really enjoyed that story. And then we had the whole Lyndon James coming in, the one who killed Maya, unfortunately. That's another thing, actually. I think the fact that Maya's death didn't really have any correlation to the story, I don't really think helped Emily's case. I think if Maya's death had some sort of inclusion with either Alison or or whoever, I think it would have been a really nice, okay, we're tying it into the story. But I think the fact that Maya's death gets passed off as just like an obsessive boyfriend, I'm like, okay, so that was for nothing. Do you know what I mean? Now, Emily then kills Lyndon James by accident as like self-defense. And I wish they would have explored the aftermath of this. There's a real issue with, it's like when Arya killed Shauna. Like, Arya had PTSD for like a day and then forgot about it. It would have been so nice to explore Emily's kind of reaction to everything. Like, obviously taking a human life, like, I can't even fathom the thought of like it being accidental as well, and kind of like you have to as like self-defense. Emily, I guess, is regarded more as like the weak emotional character at this point in the story. So I think it would have been really interesting to kind of really deal with the aftermath of that and the more traumatic response to it. But we didn't really get anything from that. So I think it would have been really a nice payoff to Emily's character and a nice kind of reflection of where she's at this current time and kind of everything she's going through and how she's still kind of dealing with stuff like that. It would have been nice to delve into that story. Now, season 4, this is going to sound really, really weird from me. A lot happens to Emily, but it's kind of like, okay. I think that's because the writers in Pretty Little Liars, they're good at doing tragedies, like moments where it's like, oh, okay, like that's happened. But it's more like the aftermath of it. Like things happened with Emily, but I'm like, okay, now how are we going to deal with this? Like what's the fallout going to be? And there's like no fallout from anything. And I think that is another issue regarding Emily. So then we have the whole Emily gets locked in a box in Ravenswood by A. And that whole like situation, but we weren't really able to explore that part very much because obviously Cece got revealed as Redcoat and we had kind of other issues at hand. That's another thing. Okay, whenever Emily has kind of like an important bit in her story, another character has a more important part in the story because it's like involved in the story. Like Emily's going through something really important in her life, but maybe someone like Aria is going through something which is more vital to the story, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like, right, I'm trying to care about Emily's life. I really like Emily. She's a character that I really want to love and care about. We're moving on in the story. And I think this is kind of like a vital part in kind of like the conclusion of what I'm trying to say. We're not finished. Don't click off. We're not done. I'm just saying. Emily's a character where she's going, I'm going to use some Olivia Rodrigo here. Emily is always a character in her life. She's taking one step forward, but in the story, in the A story, in the whole Pretty Little Liars story, she's taking 3 steps back. She's frozen in time, and it feels like the other liars are always going forward, if that makes sense. Because at this time, A also crashes into Emily's house. However, at this time, Spencer's joining the A team. I'm more interested in that. The whole Ezra reveal is happening with like his secret lair. And is he A? And the whole book reveal, I'm more interested in that. So Emily, although she has these storylines, there's other things going on which I think hold more value in the show. Then at this time as well, Wilden's death has happened. Ashley's being set up for it. Hannah has that storyline. These are points in the show that I'm more interested about because they're influencing the story. They're influencing what's going on in the show in regards to Alison, to A, things like that. Season 5, we have that bang bang dancing scene. I feel like I should just move on. Alison comes back, and I thought this would be a really important time for Emily, but they kind of accept her back with like no issues. They do a bit of exploration, like I said earlier on, where they kind of like kiss and like, right, do I actually have feelings for you, or was it the old Alison that I still love? I did enjoy that aspect of it. Also, Emily ends up getting back with Paige, but Paige like moves away. So she starts dating this girl called Talia, I think her name was, who is older than her and married, I've written down. So we have another relationship that's just kind of really inappropriate and I don't think really helps Emily's cause as well. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, Emily is really determined to set Alison up for Mona's murder. I did enjoy that storyline because that has impact on the show. This has impact in characters that I care about, has more development to them, but also, like I said, it moves the story forward. It keeps things going. And that's when Emily's character is really, really nice, when things are going forward for her and she's really having importance within the show. Season 6, Emily is involved in the dollhouse. However, I feel like she was just kind of there in the dollhouse because this was kind of the time where Spencer was taking the front of the show and the show was turning into Spencer's own kind of little thing. And I feel like the other liars kind of did get pushed back at this stage. So although Emily had a really important storyline here, it did have involvement in the plot, she was just kind of there. I did enjoy the aftermath of it though, because after the dollhouse, she went to like a shooting range to kind of like learn to like defend herself. So it was clear that she was dealing with some trauma there. So I really enjoyed kind of exploring Emily's aftermath to everything there. Now, this is when Sarah Harvey comes into it. And Sarah Harvey was probably one of the most hated characters on the show. She was very boring. She was very bland. Now, Sarah Harvey was in the dollhouse and she ends up moving in with Emily. And it's just Sarah's very boring, you see. Sarah is very, like, one-dimensional. There's nothing to... Who is Sarah Harvey? Like, she's very, very boring. And I feel like that also doesn't help Emily's case. She's one of the most hated characters on the show. People are not going to like that relationship. She's not liked. She's just not valued on the show whatsoever because she's very boring. She's very annoying. She's very whiny. It's very like, why is she here type of thing. Do you know what I mean at the end of the day? So that did not help Emily's situation whatsoever. Time jump wise, after the time jump, we find out that Wayne has died. And look, I wish this happened on screen because you could tell that Emily and Wayne had a really, really nice father-daughter relationship. I'm a sucker for father-daughter relationships like that. The Last of Us, and Stranger Things with Hopper and Eleven. Wow. I don't even have daddy issues either. Like, so I don't really know where that comes from because I have a good relationship with my dad. I really wish that happened on screen because I feel like that would have really helped Emily's character come forward a bit more, come a bit out of her shell and have to deal with losing such an important figure in her life. But the fact that it's kind of like, oh yeah, this happened off screen, by the way. Okay, right. But I didn't see it. So how am I supposed to feel at this point for Emily? I sympathize with Emily, I really do. But I feel like we can't sympathize enough because we didn't experience that with her type of thing. But I enjoy kind of like she drops out of college, she kind of fakes a graduation and she returns back to Rosewood and she kind of keeps up this like lie that's going on. I really enjoyed that because it's like, okay, she's got personality now. We're doing something with her. Season 7. One thing about me, I'm going to speak about season 7. I despise season 7 very much. When I rewatched the show, I stopped watching after the Cece reveal. I think that's where the show should have ended. Season 7 is when Emily and Alison really kind of get together. And we have the whole twin thing. So Emily ends up selling her eggs for some money. But AD and Archer impregnate Alison with Emily's eggs and Ren's kind of stuff. And therefore Alison gives birth to twins. And by the way, these twins are blonde hair, blue eye children. Now, I'm not too sure when it comes to having children that way. And I guess Alison is like the surrogate in this situation. I'm not sure on how much the kids would take, kind of like the person who gives birth, how much DNA they would take from that person. When the parents are Emily and Ren, I don't understand how the twins could look like this. But nonetheless, that's the whole twin situation. And it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. And it doesn't do the Alison and Emily relationship any help either. It is very uncomfortable. It's so forceful. There's no consent in any of it. And it's like, right, we've kind of forced them to have this family. And I think that's what the writers were doing, because I think the audience really wanted Emily and Alison together and wanted them to have their own family, but I don't think they were at the stage where they both wanted that. So I feel like the writers did that for fan service. And it's super uncomfortable. It's super like, I'm not buying into this now, because it's like they're forced to be together because of these children. I really don't like it. Also, what business did AD and Archer have to do this? Why would they do that? It's just like, I don't like it. I think it's very forceful, and I think it's kind of like, right, you know, we've made Emily and Alison this family. Here you go, audience. It's kind of like, okay. I'm coming towards my conclusion now. Emily's storylines just had minimal impact in the story, and I think that's kind of the issue. And although it's really interesting to explore these relationships that she does have, it's kind of her entire personality. And I think Shay and I think Emily are really interesting. And I would have liked for Shay to be shown off more, because I know what she can do. And I feel like it was very limited because of the writing surrounding Emily. And it was just other things were going on that were just kind of more important at that point in the story. I couldn't build into Emily's relationships because there was no chemistry. I didn't feel any chemistry with any of her relationships, and her relationship, which became Endgame, although they did divorce in The Perfectionist, that was very forceful as well. I also think there's very minimal development when it comes to Emily's personality. I don't feel attached to Emily. There's nothing drawing me in regarding her personality. The other liars, my favorite was Hannah. The other liars just have a bit more to them because the writers have obviously taken more time to write into those characters. And that's when we need to talk about the diversity aspect and the diversity problem on Pretty Little Liars. And I've read up on a lot of forums about this because I didn't want to speak for other people and I wanted to hear other people's perspectives. Honestly, like, looking back, Pretty Little Liars had a really, really bad problem with diversity. A lot of it was really noticed when Cece, who was the only transgender character, kind of became the villain, and they really kind of used her dead name as kind of like the focal point of like this whole thing. Sorry, I've written this down. As well as this on the show, Shauna being A, Mona being A, and everybody who dies was a person of color. Nate, Maya, Garrett, Shauna, Yvonne, Wayne. And this is backed up by the fact that they made Emily, who was a lesbian and a person of color, the only one not to have a consistent love interest on the show. Now, I'm not accusing the directors or the writers of anything, but I do think it's something that does need to be highlighted, because sometimes I think writers do this without noticing or without realizing they're doing this. But there was a lack of diversity when it came to a lot of aspects on the show, because whether the writers knew they were doing it or not, a lot of people on the show who did show these diverse characters were very mistreated and kind of underwhelming, and also the writing surrounding them was very lackluster, and you could tell there was a lack of energy put towards these characters. But yeah, it's a real shame that Emily's character really amounted to nothing, because I think the potential was there. I really liked Emily. I really gravitated towards her because I think she was a people pleaser, and I think that was one of her issues, and kind of learning to grow out of that and to put yourself first. I think that was really nice to explore, but I feel like overall the writing surrounding Emily was just so underwhelming. That is it for this video. I would love to hear your opinions down below regarding Emily and Emily's character, or on anything that I have said regarding Emily. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.